Hello, this is Mike Feiner of Feiner Wealth Management, and this is part 2 of our cryptocurrency update. Today we're going to talk specifically about the blockchain. When we talked about cryptocurrency last time, we talked about the overall cryptocurrency digital coin system. On the one hand, cryptocurrency has the blockchain, which we'll discuss, while regular currency issued by a government is regulated by a central bank. In the case of the United States, it's the Federal Reserve Bank, which issues our paper money or fiat currency. In the case of cryptocurrency, we have something that we call the blockchain. And what that is a computer-driven algorithm that issues the computer program and that validates all of the transactions within the cryptocurrency chain. So how does that work in reality? Let's do a typical transaction. If you were to go to Dunkin' Donuts, for example, and buy a large iced coffee, and you were to pay for that with a $10 bill of United States currency, that is a bill that is issued by the Federal Reserve Bank. It is regulated by the Federal Reserve Bank, and when you pay the $10 to buy your iced coffee and you give it to someone at Dunkin' Donuts, they obviously take that $10 and deposit it in, say, Bank of America. How is that accounted for? It's a bank that reports to the central bank. In our case, it's the Federal Reserve. Now, if Dunkin' Donuts would accept Bitcoin, for example, which it may someday, how does that work differently? Well, you could pay Dunkin' Donuts the equivalent of $10 in Bitcoin. However, when they receive that Bitcoin, instead of that $10 being deposited into a bank, it is deposited electronically into either the blockchain or someone that uses the blockchain. And the blockchain is different than the Federal Reserve Bank from the perspective of the blockchain is validated by independent computer systems, so-called miners. What are miners? Miners are large computer systems that look at transactions and consolidate them into a block. So it may be hundreds or thousands of Bitcoin transactions. Independent miners are incentivized by Bitcoin, for example, to validate that block and solve an algorithm, cryptography, from a cryptological perspective, in order to solve a puzzle that validates that block. Now, the first miner or computer system that solves the block is awarded 1 Bitcoin. So there are thousands of miners out there who are validating all of the transactions that are occurring. So in our example of Dunkin' Donuts, if you spent $10 at Dunkin' Donuts, that $10 is transmitted to the unregulated blockchain of computer systems. And the first computer system that solves the puzzle to validate that block of transactions is rewarded with a Bitcoin. Once that block is solved and set, it is irreversibly done, and they move to the next block of transactions. Now, why do they do all this? In our case of buying $10 at Dunkin' Donuts, if you use cash and you deposit in Bank of America, they validate that you deposited that $10. In the case of Bitcoin, we want to make sure that Bitcoin or other digital currency is not spent twice. So once it is spent or deposited in someone else's account or chain, then it is irreversibly done in that block, so it can't be spent again. What is the chain? Once a block is done, it is chained to the next block, and so on and so forth. So all of the time, there are different blocks that are done when people spend their money. They're validated, they're closed, and then they are chained to the next block. And this entire block and chains of blocks is available to whoever wants to review it. And that is the difference between the blockchain and, say, the Federal Reserve System. With the Federal Reserve System and the banks are validating paper currency transactions in, say, US dollars, it is the miners that are validating the transactions in the blockchain. And it's the blockchain that contains the entire history of every digital transaction that's ever been done. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss a little bit about the blockchain. And we look forward to speaking with you again. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time at 978-740-1011 or at michael.finer@finer.com. Thanks so much.